2 centuries of neutrality that's about to end. How big a step is this for Sweden and Finland?
This is a momentous act on both nations. They have long histories of neutrality. They have had a studied policy of non-alignment, and they have relied on neutrality and international law. The invasion of Ukraine shows that you can't rely on neutrality and international law. Moldova also has been threatened. No one knows what Putin will do next, not necessarily in the short term, but in the long term. And therefore, this has resulted in a fundamental change in policy on the part of Finland and Sweden. And indeed, there seems to be the implications of the Russian actions are that actually there's no room for neutrality or little room for neutrality in Europe.
Yes. And in fact, Russia's stated intention, or Putin's stated intention, was to hold NATO at bay. This would be bringing NATO closer to Russia's borders than ever.
Absolutely. I mean, this fundamentally changes the geography of Europe. Because previously there was this buffer of neutral states between Russia and NATO. This creates an 810-mile addition to the border between NATO states and the Russian Federation. So you're right, the calculation was that he said that he was concerned about NATO expansion and encroachment. Well, actually, the consequence of his aggression are that NATO has united, has grown in confidence and response, and also it seems will grow in numbers as a consequence of his actions.
So when you talk about things changing geographically, how do things change militarily with a step like this?
Well, actually, in terms of the defence of Europe, in particular the Baltic states, the addition of Sweden and Finland are a net advantage to NATO. They're heavily armed countries with conscription, well-resourced armed forces, very capable armed forces, and therefore they make a material contribution to the potential defence of the Baltic states. So their contribution is one which is welcome across the board. But it's politically that their impact is more widely felt. And NATO grows in strength, it grows in stature, and it sends a signal to Moscow that actually its actions, far from weakening NATO and pushing on a weak and divided West, have actually united and strengthened the West response to his actions.
Yes. OK, let's talk about how soon they could be able to join. We heard from Mitch McConnell earlier in the program that they would be hoping to potentially get this done by the August recess in terms of the US political calendar. That would seem very fast.
Historically, these have taken much longer, but these are unprecedented times, and there's a willingness on the part of NATO, and indeed most if not all NATO states, to actually do this as quickly as possible, recognizing that we are at a period of exceptional peril in European security, in that Russia is flagrantly breaking all the pre-existing rules of international relations. So it's likely that this will be done very quickly. It requires every state to ratify that. The Germans are very keen to be the first, given that their position in Europe. The Turks have suggested that they're not entirely happy, but the indications are that's about bargaining for some concessions that the Turks want from NATO on other issues, and therefore it won't be an obstacle. So we can expect this to be done in short order.
And so, yes, Turkey had sort of given a sense that they may stand in the way, but do you feel that that's not going to be the case?
The indications are that it's bargaining rather than a principled response.
Indeed.
But it may also be the case that Turkey wants to actually appear to be slightly more neutral, given that they have a rather unusual relationship with both NATO and Russia.
Indeed. So let's come to Russia. How might Russia respond? It's not going to calm Putin's sense of an existential threat.
No, indeed. In fact, on the specifics of that, the Russians have indicated that they regard both Sweden and Finland's moves as aggressive, and they have said that Russia will respond with a military technical response and retaliation, and that will constitute rebalancing. So it's likely that they will deploy nuclear weapons on the Finnish border as a symbolic response to that action.
Yeah, that is interesting. you know, the war continues. It does seem, though, as if, you know, we're seeing Ukraine in many ways gaining an upper hand at the moment.
Yes, it's clear that the Russians' forces that we all thought we knew are proven to be a paper tiger. They're badly led. They are badly organised. They perform very badly, and their losses are considerable. So Ukraine does seem to be regaining territory and certainly holding the Russians at bay. The Russians, in fact, are changing their tactics and consolidating what they're doing in the limited areas in the Luhansk region, rather than actually going beyond that, because they recognise their inability to carry through on their initial plans.
David, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.